In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting in a hybrid model, both virtually and in person. The Public Works Commission is conducting this meeting October 11th, 2023 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1st, 2020 and amended on May 7th. I ask that all Public Works Commissioners, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their microphone unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. Although I think we'll all be all the committee will be in person. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, in order to be recognized, please use the raise hand option in Zoom or use *9 by phone. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. Okay, I, Andrea Solomon, hereby call this meeting to order. All commissioner votes will be, we don't have to take those via roll call, so we'll just start with an attendance roll call of commissioners. When I announce your name, please reply. Sven Weber.
Aye.
David DeLong.
Present.
James Terry.
Aye.
Andrea Solomon here, and Jeff is on his way. So we'll review a final improvement and final approval of minutes. We had amended minutes, I think.
Right, you'll notice that the first paragraph under action items was taken from a prior meeting, so
Okay.
this fixes it. I noticed
Okay.
that too.
All right. So
I don't have any other comments.
anybody else?
Sven?
So just which version is not the right one?
I have the one too. One that just came.
The one, this one here.
Oh, I think Linda gave a copy
one
of
with
the
additional
revised.
dot in it.
That's right.
Okay. So we should take the dot out.
Pardon?
We should take the additional dot out.
Where's the additional dot?
Yeah, this dot.
Oh.
Normally you catch these things.
That might be a smudge.
I move that we approve the minutes of September 13th, 2023. A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, unanimous. All right, so, all right, on to
Calendar.
calendar. Future proposed meeting dates. So our next meeting date is gonna be October 8th, November 8th. Everyone, all right,
Yes.
okay. And on to D1, Community Preservation Act Letter of Support.
Okay, like a little introduction.
Sure.
Okay, so first, before we go, I got a email from our IT group that we're presently experiencing network issues that are impacting mostly the broadband network, including customers and remote sites that use ONTs for connectivity. So I don't know if that affects us or not, but just as a heads up, if we lose connection, at least we have the quorum presently in person. So
Okay.
just sort of let people know that in case something happens beyond our control. Good to see you, Jeff. Thanks for getting through the traffic in town.
Just the traffic planning in this town. We just
you
head of a new task force.
So we have
Every time.
sort of in the packet, there was some information. This is the time of year where there are various applications for the community preservation funding. Applications are made through the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee. There are two items this year that have sort of fairly direct connect interest to Concord Public Works, and both are projects where staff's been aware of and apprised of, but they're looking for time to get letters of support. So in the packet, we provided both applications. The first one deals with the iron structure restorations in the cemetery. Aaron McClosco, you might want to come up here and give sort of, Aaron, is our highway ground superintendent. He also, sort of coordinates a lot of the cemetery activities, and there is a, cemetery committee that, Aaron sort of, manages, but maybe you can give a little context of this project, for the commission.
Absolutely. Good evening, Aaron McClosco, Highway and Ground Superintendent. So as Alan mentioned, I work closely with the cemetery committee, and, they work through priorities annually. One of the priorities that was brought forward by some of the members, including the chair, were an assessment of the steel structures, specifically the fences and the gates throughout Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, similar to last year's assessment of stone walls. So the decision was made to try to ask for a CPA grant and match that with 10% funding from the cemetery fund, for a total project of about $25,000, and do an evaluation and an inventory of those structures in the cemetery, with the intentions of putting together a capital plan for any type of restoration or replacement that needs to happen for those assets.
My question when I read that was, what's the commitment of time from your staff? What is the involvement? How does this put a burden on you? Any demands of time?
So kind of coordination with, we bring in a consultant, some type of an engineering firm, similar to ones we work with, on a regular basis for these type of projects. So mostly project management, some on-site meetings,
And you're
maybe 40 hours worth
And you're
of
comfortable
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
the demand, with the,
balance it with the rest of our operational needs.
okay.
To be myself, could be the assistant superintendent or the cemetery supervisor involved in that project.
So the cemetery committee is going to provide 10% of the funding,
And cemetery fund,
cemetery fund.
yeah, correct. Yep. It's a budget that we manage under Public Works.
Yep.
Hence, the project cost is 25,000, and we're contributing to 2,500, correct?
So annually, as a capital ask, when we're developing the budget for cemetery specifically, we request $40,000 for capital projects. I consider that as part of that. So we funded from as part of that ask in the FY25 budget.
So we need to have a motion.
We could do both, I think. The second letter is for the trees, the planting of the trees, the 250 trees in commemoration.
So we actually have it where you could do one vote for the,
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of two motions.
yeah, that.
Go for it,
Oh,
Dave.
Okay, I, David DeLong, hereby move to authorize Chair Solomon to submit a letter of support to the Community Preservation Committee on behalf of the Public Works Commission, affirming our support for an application for CPC funding entitled Cemetery Metal Structure Assessment.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
You want to tell us about trees too?
Well, actually, yeah, if you can start, you can also introduce Krista and.
I don't want to speak for the committee or the subcommittee, but as part of the 250th celebration events that are going to be happening in town next year, there's a 250th permanent memorial subcommittee that was established, and one of the projects which they would like to move forward on is planting a and that was put together by that subcommittee. There's some members here who can speak to more detail about that. Our involvement as far as the town most of the 250 would be, as well as trees on town property. So coordinating those efforts and working closely with that group, as well as other town departments, and that effort should be funded through CPA and then all funding separately from that.
And they'll get a little marker or something.
Possibly.
They themselves are markers.
Moving memorial.
Again, is there any, again, commitment on your part as the tree warden or the town's responsibility to take care of those trees, particularly
Yes.
new trees? Is this a demand, service or another task for your department?
Yes, this one would be pretty significant. Yeah. With the committee, really the demand is on town staff is coordinating, from the beginning is to outsource the installation of the trees. So really they'd be planted by a third party company that would come in as an expertise in planting public shade trees. So they procure the trees, they'd install the trees, they'd vet the sites, working with the tree warden and other department managers and potentially private party abutters to coordinate locations of the tree planting. So there's a time consuming process when it comes to planting any trees. We have an annual tree planting program separate from this. And then, future maintenance of the trees is something that's
Yeah.
pretty significant, watering of trees, inspecting of trees. So be an ongoing commitment, but the town staff and the town is maintenance of the trees that'd be essential. So
We
We
also
have
have some committee members here. I don't know if you wanna
Sure.
say and introduce.
Hi, I'm Krista Collins,
Tui Rogers.
we're members of the Tuesday Permit Memorial Subcommittee. Aaron did a great job of summarizing that, and he and Eric have been fantastic, kind of helping us understand all the challenges inherent in, you see an open space and you're like, oh, that would be great for a tree, and then you realize there are wires or sewers or any number of things that could impede tree growth. But we are hopeful that, not only will this be a great way to create a living memorial to mark the 250th anniversary of the revolution, but also to raise awareness about the importance of trees in the community so that we can then go advocate for more operating and maintenance money in future town budgets.
Great. Any other questions?
This is over and above our annual,
yes,
how many trees do we plant annually on?
target about 100 trees annually between the fall and the spring planting.
It's nice.
So we have a request right now for FY25, $50,000 for public shade tree planting. So that funds the procurement of the trees as well as installation. The installation can be done by in-house staff or contracted.
Great.
Anyone want to make a motion?
Somebody else read.
I move that we authorize the chair to write a letter of support to the Community Preservation Committee on behalf of the Public Works Commission, affirming our support in the application of the CPC funding entitled 250 Trees for 250th Initiative.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Aaron. Thank
Aaron.
you.
Thanks.
for doing this. Right, so we'll move on to the fiscal year 25 general fund.
All right, so we have been given, it's kind of interesting, after our last commission meeting, we hadn't been given instructions on sort of the capital planning, which generally comes through the finance department, town manager's office. And the very next day, sort of we got some marching orders, so we were able to move things along, trying to keep to the town's schedule. Historically, the general fund is kind of the most challenging because there's lots of competing needs and interests, so we have got our asks and requests, and they're still kind of in a almost draft form because now they're going to be vetted up at the town manager's office and with the finance department and the finance committee. This year was a little bit more challenging for us, and that the format changed a little bit. The time was compressed a little bit, and we also had to contemplate facilities, which was the first time since we've sort of picked up the at least management of facilities for the foreseeable future. So we do appreciate that this is kind of draft. It's literally hot off the press, but I think for the first time, you're getting it about the same time as town manager's office. And I think what's important is, and we've heard through this commission, sort of the need to be aware of what, the needs are. Understand that we're talking capital right now. Our operating budgets are being developed, sort of they're a little less volatile. It's just a question of, sort of putting together a lot of details for FY 24 and projecting 25. But the capital plan is significant. And we gave you a lot of information in the packet, more than you historically would have received. And it's just there because, we're just trying to make sure people are aware of what it is that we see as needs, for the areas under Public Works. And I think, there was a memo that provided some context. Hopefully that's helpful. And also important to talk about, we're not just talking about FY 25. The interest now townwide is to at least know 5-year, 10-year plans, even as far as 20 when we have it. So what you're going to see is this is a really important planning document for staff. We have certain things on our radar that we know might be coming down in future years, but the real focus of the budget cycle is FY 25. And so we have a little bit more, I'd like to say there's a skeleton for our budgets for all of these accounts that go out to 5-10 years, but more, kind of muscle and flesh on the 25, because those are sort of more real. And what I'd suggest is Steve Dukran, you might want to come up. We can maybe start with engineering. So Steve and his team are the people who put together, and in our budget plan, I'll kind of share the screen. Here. But you do have it in the packet. Let's see if I can. This. There we go. And this is basically engineer's budget plan. So I don't know the best way to kind of just the overarching numbers. If you notice the total, we're looking at, a budget of, this is what was not requested, but allocated for FY 24. You'll see what we're requesting and projecting out, future years, but our focus today is primarily on the FY 25. And so in the packet, there was a narrative to kind of explain what and how we've bundled these things. And just as a recollection to the group, last year, the year before, it's the first time we actually started being consistent with this sort of approach, and just so we can track things. So with that, I don't know the best way, Andre, if you want to just ask questions, you want Steve to give an overview of what he thinks important, you tell us.
Yeah, if everyone's read it, we could just ask,
Yeah.
you want to go through section by section and ask questions, or, okay, so we'll start with engineering questions.
Sure.
Anyone on the first section, asset management tools? Anyone?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that one, Steve. You might want to help, it's not the biggest money, but it's
Yeah.
one of the more important, sort of planning tools we're looking for.
Yes, so Alan referenced what we started a couple of years ago, looking at, sometimes we call it buckets, but I like to call them more programs. Like pavement management is a program. I wouldn't call, you probably have heard the term roads program before, we've used that for years. But I think it has been misleading, because if you have a true roads program, you go into a neighborhood, but in a circle, and you want to do everything there. Drainage, all utilities, sidewalks, and all of that. And we never have enough resources to do a whole program. But we could justify, we need this amount of money for pavement management, which is a lot less than the whole program. And then you get the pavement management money. You don't get all of it. We asked for FY 25, we're asking for pavement management. Where is that line?
Nine,
Pavement management.
number 9.
9. Oh, okay, right.
Few up in the bottom.
$4 million,
There we go. Yeah, it's a
right?
big number
Right.
across.
But anyway, so where, how does, well, we want to talk about asset management fit into this. So having identified each program has its assets. So payment itself is an asset. And to this point, we have been doing a fairly good job with assessing pavement. We use a program called Street Scan. But we have assets, we have guardrail, we have signals, we have sidewalks, and all of those assets, we don't have a good feel for what those needs are. So we have to understand what the extent of all these assets are. For instance, we have 6.35 miles of guardrail. How much of that is bad, right? So there needs to be a review of the guardrail, which is a fairly simple one, but let's take drainage, for instance, right? We may have, I think we have like 30 miles of underground drains. You know, how old are they? What they made of? Dimensions, condition. Condition is a big part of your asset management. So you have to invest money and time in trying to get this.
So how do you, have you started building these things, and is it a database? Is it an Excel file? How do you populate it?
So we thought we could do it in-house with staff, but we can never get enough time to do all of this. So the most efficient way is hiring a company to go out and do, especially like drainage, hire a company to go out, clean your lines and your structures, do a video, collect information regarding the condition, and take dimensions, what's the size of pipe, what it's made of, and they will give you a report. And then that report will get populated into a database. Now, there might be some programs that exist that can automatically download all that information. But what we're looking at for a program with a big database is something like, there's several of them out there. We work in conjunction with water and sewer, wanted to have the same kind of system. And for instance, there's one called Cartograph, there's one called Hanson. These are large programs that have been around for a long time, and you can populate their database with pretty much any kind of asset, whether it's a street asset or a facility asset. And
do other towns like Lexington or Acton or whatever, have they done things that we're finding out how they've done it, and we're going to decide whether that's a good way to do it or not? Or are we just starting all by ourselves?
No, we're not starting by ourselves. Many towns have asset management programs.
Okay.
We just don't have one here just yet.
So we're in communication with other communities to find out what they've done so we can build on it?
Well, in my past job, I have used.
I sense that was
A few.
one of the answers. Yes.
And Jeff has, and Aaron has too. So we're working towards doing that, and that's why we want, investment into that program, so we can.
This is going to take an awful lot of time and effort. Mhm. Do people need to be experts? Can you use volunteers? $100,000 isn't going to go very far, is my suspicion. And, you've got so many different databases. Are you going to try and do a little bit on all of them, or a lot on one?
We start, this year we're starting with drainage because of all the issues we've had with drainage. We've had a lot of rain. Our system hasn't been functioning properly. We find out more and more there. Some of our pipes are broken. Some of them are clogged. Some of them have tree roots. But we just don't have a good set of data regarding what the system is and how it's functioning. So we want to put some money into cleaning those pipes, sending cameras down, taking the measurements, and building that program, investing in the system, the tool. So we, at the same time, the company that we're hiring will also help us with looking into these different tools that are available and starting to build. And then as we go into future years, we will bring more assets onto the same program.
Can I ask a question? Step back. I totally follow what you're doing. It sounds fine. In terms of decision making, what we're doing here is what you're proposing here. Is this what right now the department is going to propose to the town, these numbers?
Thank you.
And you're trying to make the case to us
Yeah.
that that this is what we should do? Sort of, you want us to say, yeah, that sounds good? Or where,
Yeah.
what's the decision making
Yeah, thank you.
process here?
And you always ask like, well, why, what are you telling us and what's our action?
What should we be here
Right.
listening?
In this case, it's informing and making you aware of some of these needs that we as staff are going to be advancing. And it's familiarizing you with the programs and order of magnitude as far as costs, and explaining. And this is a first part of a public outreach. So the nice thing is this is now that we have Zoom meetings, people can watch this. Another opportunity to learn a little bit about, what departments are doing. And historically, there's been a review, but that's really for information purposes. Now, if you have some strong opinions on things and you might hear, someone wants to champion, well, what about this? We're all ears, but this goes to the town manager and the finance group.
This will.
This memo that you see, and then it gets, massaged through various hearings. That's the FinCom will review this, and that's another public vetting. And then final decisions are made where, whatever, it's not even horse trading, it's just, we have X amount of money. We're going to allocate it this way. What's really important, Dave, is the future years. This provides information so they know it's not just a one-time. We need to plan on this. And then hopefully with the FinCom, finance director, town manager, they can look at ways of how can we, capture these costs? How do we pay for this? And what are the priorities? Your action is simply awareness and, a sense of people, you're on the commission, people are asking, you should have some familiarity. And you also talk to Steve Dukran. We heard about that. You don't know the specifics, but you know who to have people talk to.
So right now thank you. So right now you're gonna go to the town and ask for $4 million for road pavement management,
Yes.
right? That's what you're telling us.
That's right. This will be included in a budget request. And then it hasn't gone through the chopping blocks yet. It's gonna go through the town manager's office. And we don't know what is gonna go to the FinCom, but this is our recommendation.
Right.
We also are realists. The town's capital plan may be 8, 9, 10 million. Well, what about all the other needs in town? One thing that's important is this is for the right of way. We're going to go through, this is for those programs under engineering. You're going to hear about highway grounds. You're going to hear about facilities now. We have 26 structures that we're responsible for. And next meeting, you'll hear about water, sewer, as well.
Okay.
So we didn't have asset management tools before, like we hadn't been using anything else, third party.
Right, we haven't had a real
So
tool
this is the
for
first year
everything.
we do that. We're starting with drainage.
Hopefully, by the end of the year, we
Okay.
will have something, yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Alan, is it correct to say that anything that's $500,000 and above is a borrowed item, and anything less than that, tier 1, tier 2?
Right. So Jim's talking about models in the past that the finance committee has sort of identified as, and they had thresholds, what's going to be borrowed or what would be, through, cash on hand or, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong. This year, we don't know what the threshold is. It's really up to,
You could go, just tell us what you need. We'll figure out what gets
Okay,
borrowed and not borrowed.
okay,
right.
After they figure out what they're gonna fund.
So that's
Okay.
Bob Hill. He's our business manager for Public Works, and Bob is the guy who's put all these numbers. He's, we're the stray cats, and he ends up having to figure out what format and get it there. So Bob knows our budgets pretty well, and he's getting, direct line to the finance, department as far as the approach. But Jim, those are to be determined.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said you're not calling the road pavement management a road pavement program or a road program because there's never enough money. So if there would be a road program, how much money would that be?
FY 25, $8.614 million.
Yeah, right here. It's inclusive of all these.
Oh, that's so.
Yeah,
So the whole thing is the program. No.
that's what historically, that's how we present it, and we'd present it. I mean, maybe there was some additional line items, but it was always 2.5 million, 3 million. And what's the problem is, it includes all these things, and it's up to you to imagine what you think that money that was approved was for. The problem is, everybody thought it was for what they had identified as a priority. What do you mean? You got the 2.5 million, why aren't you doing the traffic signals and signage?
Yeah.
Well, we paved road, so this is our way of breaking it apart into assets. And I think that's part of the engineering, Sven, of what are those assets that are similar, and how do we manage those assets? Because they are discrete enough where they may require different specific programs.
So, okay, so the road pavement management is in line with the numbers from the study.
Yeah, that's the PCI information
Exactly.
we're talking about, yeah.
So that's one. The transportation program is new.
Mhm.
So whatever the future thing is, you must have big plans behind that. But that's more or less, I thought that there will be kind of a study or consultant or whatever looking to it, what that actually is. Or do you have an idea whatever fiscal year 29 or 1.5 million behind the transportation program is?
Right, so let's talk about that for a moment. So that's new, right, as you said. There's a study that has started a few months ago now. Which is called a comprehensive transportation study. It actually was initiated in the planning division. We are now more actively involved in its management. So a consultant is looking at data that they're going to try to collect through a survey of the residents, as well as some public meetings, one scheduled for next Tuesday, late evening over the Harvey Wheeler. So I'm hoping everyone's been invited, and you try to talk about, what the goals of the study are, and the whole point is to come with a plan of what the town needs to do in terms of improvements to its transportation, not only in the roadway in terms of sidewalk network or bicycle network, but also public transportation, what the town needs for for that, accessibility. My view, parking should be part of that as well. Others have a different opinion, but we can still work through those issues. This all came about from the Envision 2030 study, where transportation and mobility were highlighted as an area that needed to be worked on. And so this is a planning study. It'll give you more of a high-level type of result in terms of ideas, not just ideas, but ideas that can be implemented with costs. So, and those costs will probably be a 10-year cost, wouldn't be exact project costs, but overall programming costs. So even with that, we've just taken a stab at you know, some numbers, some costs would be needed in the futures, so.
So, but this will be, again, I understand now it is a study, that's easy to understand for fiscal year 25. But this is ballooning to be then the second largest position in the whole budget till 29. So there must be some idea what this is, because bike improvements, we have extra line, parking, we have extra line. So what is behind that 1.5 million?
Right now, we don't know, we're hoping,
Just this.
we're hoping
It's
that, yeah,
okay
yeah,
for me
it's that,
to
it's
say
that,
that.
it's exactly that, yeah. Yes.
And
To-
it's
to
entirely
be
appropriate.
informed,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're talking order of magnitude.
Mhm.
And we're hearing, and again, we don't, Envision Concord captured a lot of interest and input. So very public, a lot of interest, but there are issues that, you know, how do you potentially, you know, create connectivity from West Concord to this side of Concord? You know, these are large initiatives and projects. It's about connecting and getting people around town. So, you know, is there a, you know, bus service, local bus service? You know, what does it take to, you know, get the assets? Transportation's a big part of just getting people around. And as Steve sends to volunteer and kind of listen to him, we know what today's issues and challenges are. The challenge is, well, where are we going? And what's the trend of transportation? And we hear all sorts of, you know, concepts, you know, once we start, you know, having flying cars, all right, we might start looking at our, you know, bicycle lanes a little bit differently. We know that's a matter of time, you know, it's not, we're not the Jetsons tomorrow, but we got to think about that. And Sven, it is an order of magnitude at this point, and the study will help, you know, future years are simply a flag of we anticipate some significant capital investments. That's really
Right.
what it says now.
But there's one thing I want to make sure, and I'm sure I've said this before, so lines 2 through 11. We may describe them as improvements, repairs, rehabilitation. They are really trying to address the existing infrastructure network that we have today. Now, when I started working on it a few years ago, we talked about our infrastructure has been ignored quite a bit, right? Several areas, and they need to be brought back to a good working order. So it's not about adding to the infrastructure. It's not about increasing the capacity. It's about making sure the existing design capacity is being met. Like drains that are not flowing properly, let's get them replaced, repaired, let them take the capacity that they were designed for. Same thing with a roadway network. You know, if there are problems in the roadway, let's figure out those problems and fix those problems. Sidewalks, you know, you'll see later when we do the report, we talk about the sidewalks on Commonwealth Avenue. Those were in bad state of disrepair. We want to fix those. We want to go back to, at first, not go back, but we want to first achieve what public works is about. It's about, you know, making sure.
You had a question?
Yeah, question on the stormwater. So we talked about stormwater utility the last meeting, and we've got a line in here for that. And I read the description in here, and it talks about stormwater utility down the road as a possibility with this. And also, didn't stormwater utility also include culverts?
Yes.
Okay, so is this money being requested over and above what may come through a stormwater utility? Or is it, if the stormwater utility comes into being, then that would offset some of this cost?
That's correct.
Okay, the second then.
But we've been realistic about the first year, FY25.
Right.
Even though we were to get the stormwater utility approved, say, by the beginning of FY25,
Yeah.
you probably won't start realizing any revenue for
Right.
probably a whole year.
I have one quick comment on the wording for for example, the road pavement management program, when you're asking for that much money, I would certainly make it clear in the explanation what happens if we don't invest this money.
Mhm.
I don't see that in here, like, yeah, what is the cost of way underfunding this in the next few years?
Mhm.
And make it clear the pain involved in not taking action in this area.
Yeah, you guys have done a good job
Yeah.
in these meetings of explaining what happens and the incredible downturn in quality of our roads when just a little bit of maintenance is ignored or not we can't afford to do it. Then you're talking about replacing the whole thing in a much shorter amount of time.
Yeah, as long as you have traffic and bad weather.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that is like you're asking for money now that is actually gonna save you huge repairs later. You can put those off even longer when you need to.
Yes.
The budgeting process is very difficult.
Yeah.
Just notice between fiscal 24 and 25, it doubles. What was actually approved last year versus what we are requesting as needed appropriations.
Mhm.
It's not gonna happen. It won't double.
Right.
So a number of these items aren't going to happen. Now, I went back to last year's October meeting.
Mhm.
I got last year's memo. And I'm just gonna read a few of what was requested. I'm gonna start at line 6, engineering. 710,000 was requested, 25 was granted. Under parking lot, 325 was requested, but 425 was approved. Under stormwater, 460 was requested, 50 was appropriated. Under road management, 3,860,000 was requested and 2,000,006. Under pedestrian safety, 691,000 was requested. Under traffic improvements, 1,000,002 was requested. And under transportation program, 500,000 was requested. So you can see that Public Works staff has been up and doing what was appropriate. What the town manager and what the finance committee and what voters are saying they can pay for doesn't meet all of the expectation. And this is just Public Works. I mean, so there's natural resources, there's, the other areas, even though Public Works is certainly one of the biggest ones. It's good that they're planning all of this work, and we've now got staff that is bringing us information about why what we are doing right now isn't enough and why we need to do more. And so, we can't really lobby the town manager, but we can certainly, raise our concerns, as you just mentioned, that certain expenditures, if they're not done now, will cost even more. Now, this last year, remember, on some of the pavement programs that we had budgeted for, the bids came in much higher than what we had money for. And so Steve had to say, no, we're not going to accept those bids. And so we're even farther behind
Yeah.
than what was planned. And that's just the way life is. Unless someone comes up with a whole bunch of money and just gives it to the town of Concord, which I don't think is gonna happen. I'll get off my soapbox.
Jim, I appreciate that you sort of over, because we know our job is simply to give you the facts, and we
Yeah,
don't
to do-
make the decisions on the financing, but our job is to say, these are the needs, and we understand, Steve says, well, our plan is gonna be something less than, but there are consequences, and the town is not falling apart. Concord is still a beautiful community. Neighboring towns, are in good condition, but they all struggle with the same challenges. And, one thing we know is it's not just the roads. Roads are obvious and everybody feels that pain. That's why they're almost the easiest to support, because people actually see it. The culverts, the stormwater, some of these, sort of the signaling, if we had different transportation or traffic patterns, maybe you know, you could get to the meeting on time because you're going through time. You know, Concord is a congested community. We had a lot of visitors, people who come to our community to walk and visit downtowns. We're, you know, a destination. We have all these demands on us. Some of these things, when you look at the stormwater, what's really important, we're not alone. That's a regulatory driver that didn't exist before. We were put on notice 10, 20 years ago. This is coming. Start getting your house in order so you can manage your stormwater systems, because we want to protect the environment. We want to be more resilient with climate change. So this is less and less going to be a local decision. It's going to be more of a federal mandate. And every community's on notice that we're asking questions in anticipation that you're going to start spending some money. So we know that message. And one of the questions on the asset management, we're in the industry to keep our fingers on the pulse. So why, what asset management tools is Steve and his team looking at? They go to all sorts of workshops, seminars where, you're getting sold on certain things, but the other is like, oh, there's, that looks like a tool that might be useful. So
Does asset management help you determine, once you have your budget from the town and you know what you're getting from them, like how much you can get from like ARPA or Chapter 90 funds, or who helps you do that? Who helps you figure out how much money you can get from those sources?
So we keep an eye out for those opportunities. There are also announcements from the state. We've been successful in getting shared streets and spaces program that started during the pandemic. So when they're there and we can meet the criteria for those projects, we would put in a grant application. As far as we're concerned, we haven't been that great because the town itself doesn't qualify well when it comes to what they call environmental justice. Certain grants they do, but for the most part, we do not.
We don't qualify?
Only
We
the
don't.
rich white guys.
We don't, if I put it that way, we don't rank high when it comes to local needs, financial needs.
yeah, and that's a real, you've gone from communities that were sophisticated enough to go find the money, and they did very well. And they were usually communities like Concord who were keeping their eyes on the prize. Well, now there's a real interest in equity and, looking at where are the funds, and environmental justice is a big driver. And those check boxes mean points. And when you're trying to compete, you just don't get those. Concord is less and less competitive because of those factors that we can't really control. Now, it doesn't speak to the fact that Concord is evolving and changing, and we're looking at 40Bs and affordable housing and all that stuff. But those are all, that doesn't help us immediately. But we have gotten some grants, and something we'll note today as far as the complete street. I think it was not the complete street, but the Walden Street, Main Street project.
That was a shared streets and spaces.
Yeah, sure. And we sort of presented that, and we're actually getting ready to move. We worked with planning on this, so you're going to see some activity likely in November, where there's going to be an improvement, some bump outs, some safety issues, kind of transforming that little intersection to make it safer. And it's going to be different. It's kind of interesting. Concord's used to its look and feel, but that's something which we worked on with planning and got some funds, but it's not the big money that we'd be, looking at. We also have Chapter 90. That's other, source of funds for our roads program. We get about $600,000, $600,000 to $700,000 a year that, is in addition to, that helps.
Who
So-
determines how much we get from that? Like, does the state determine that?
Yes, it's state formulas, and they're actually looking at, I don't want to say regretfully, I think they're starting to look at, the formula or algorithm of, how and who should qualify. There's a lot of small communities that are really in sort of dire need of, they don't have these programs. Some people, the only money they spend on the roads is what they get through the state. We supplement it, but there are communities that are just, and again, it's physics, right? There's traffic. There's, weight of, vehicles. Even now we're starting to talk about e-vehicles are heavier and having more potential impact, but these are the things we're looking at. But Andre, your point is, we'll keep our eyes. How do we know about it? The asset management tells you where to prioritize if you're going to spend money. That's what the asset management does. The source of money is the other, game.
Yeah, and
Different.
one other thing with asset management, you can actually take the information and program a 10-year capital investment. Because you have good information.
So before Steve leaves, not on your list there is Kai's Road.
Yes. Kai's Road is this campus and primarily the public works. This facility was retrofitted for planning. It's almost losing time. It was probably 20 years
Quite a
ago.
while, yeah.
20 years ago. But we have money for planning, level assessment of our needs. There was a survey, there was a facilities assessment done for all its municipal buildings in 2019. Unfortunately, it was before this team, Public Works was really sort of, directly engaged. But we have funds that were set aside to allow us to start exploring what we could do with the site. It's planning level. I think we have $150,000 to do that this year. The real challenge is with all the equipment that we have, with the kind of activities that we try to do on this site, we outgrew the site. It was clear in that assessment for municipal buildings that this was a priority need. I recall somewhere to the tune of $60 million or something. And if we look out in the industry, that's kind of what you're looking for public works facilities. You have challenges here. It's a pretty small site. We're in a floodplain. It's close proximity to, residential and downtown. So those all add some complexity, but it's what we know. There's been discussion about other sites in town. Just to say, was it 2222 Main Street or, the former Nuclear Metals is maybe a property down the road, but that's the kind of, how far down can we look? But we've got our eyes on potential. Jim, the one of the challenges we've had recently is just staff to even manage that. As we picked up facilities, as we're doing more in transportation, any project needs to be managed. And we've been told that even police and fire and public safety has a need. So we're probably partnering with them, but that's on our radar. But it's a long-standing sort of priority. We just got to get the bandwidth to actually hire a consultant and get that thing moving. But we're talking about, it was 60 million plus or minus when they contemplated this, as far as if we have the right site.
Right. Interesting, because like in last year's budget information out, construction was 15 million and 12 million in 2 years, and now it's 30 and 30.
Yeah.
So
That may be inclusive of
cost escalation.
That's right, and that may be the police and fire component too, but we're just, we're just starting to get our arms around this. When we've seen other facilities and other communities, we're seeing that's the kind of money that they're spending.
But I guess that's a big one down the way. It's
yeah.
coming soon for you younger.
Yeah, but the little thing is adding up. Yeah, if you're getting cut back by 4 million, and we're getting cut back by 4 million every year, and you add the inflation rate on top of it.
I understand.
Yeah, 5 to 10 years of each year cutting back 4 million in all of the little things is adding up to a lot of money.
I understand. Yeah, you'd like to be in the town manager's office, I'm sure. That'll be even easier job. Yeah.
So,
Should we move on
I'm
from
good.
engineering?
yeah, let's, where are we next? We'll just go through. So the concepts are similar now, right? Now we just gotta, kind of go through. Aaron, do you want to come up and talk, highway grounds? I know we provided a lot of information, and this is almost easier
Yeah.
where it's equipment, right? And this is, it's not just a facility that includes a lot, so I'm not gonna go through all the details, but you can see all the equipment. But if we go into, I think what's notable outside of that, Aaron, I'm just sort of, kind of scrolling down to some, these are, other than the rolling fleet. I think it's just worth sort of calling out those things, because the fleet is the fleet. They have life cycles. Maybe you can explain a little bit about our practice with the fleet, so a lot of numbers there, years out, but yeah.
So the two items on the screen right now, there's a mobile vehicle lift. So we have 1 to 4 post mobile vehicle lift in the garage. So in our the 133 Kaiser Road building is our fleet maintenance shop, comprised of 3 bays. One has a 4-post lift currently. The second bay does not have any lift, and the third has a smaller lift for like sedans and smaller vehicles, pickup trucks, things like that. None of even our small dump trucks can fit on that. So we have 1 lift for all of our fleet equipment. We currently have 3 fleet mechanics, 2 master mechanics, and a fleet supervisor. So at any given time, we can lift 1 truck off the ground. And if for whatever reason that system goes down, we don't have a lift. So really we're looking to get a second lift and have that be able to use. And should we get a new facility, these are mobile vehicle lifts, so that
Great.
investment could be used in a new facility as well. So the second is the fuel master system. So that's the automated fueling system that we use throughout town. So there's 2 fuel depots. There's one located on this campus, and there's one located in West Concord at the CMLP maintenance facility. They have the same software that we use. So town vehicles can go to either fueling station 24 hours a day and fuel. So this is a software upgrade to that system. The system's 20+ years old. We've made some investment in the actual pumps themselves, some of the hardware, but really this is a kind of a software upgrade to that system. We have some connectivity issues. It's a wireless system, so most vehicles are equipped with what we refer to as a fuel ring that goes around the port for the fuel tank, and so that and then there's a reader on the actual nozzle itself, so that when the nozzle is inserted into the vehicle, it kind of reads that it's a town vehicle and it's an ID associated with it. It can collect data such as the odometer, how many gallons are being fueled, and we can track all of that for billing purposes as well as fuel tracking and energy use. So it's that system has some issues from time to time, and we'll go into what we've experienced recently is a emergency shutdown mode. I think somebody's kind of tampering with it, and then I'll go shut down, and usually happens overnight when nobody's here on the weekend. So we'll have to come in, reset it. Supervisor has to reset the system, and then you kind of get it going again. So really it's a software upgrade to get it to where we need to be, so we can continue to efficiently use the system. Those are the vehicles that we're proposing to be replaced. I think there's 2 heavy duty trucks on there. The life cycle of those trucks, we push 15 years for the heavy equipment. And I believe that there is also a smaller dump truck that's on the list, an F550. And then there's I believe it's a hot box trailer we refer to. So that's really an asphalt trailer for road maintenance. So if we don't fund the roads program and all those subsections, the question, what happens to the roads? Well, it falls on highway and grounds to maintain what's there, right? And we do that with patching and paving. And right now we have one we call hot box, if you will. It's a heated truck bed, essentially. And we're able to send it to an asphalt plant early in the mornings, filled with hot mix. We're bringing that back. We're able to patch all day with hot mix. When, if you don't have that, you're using bags of cold patch, right? And asphalt, as it cools down, it doesn't, it affects its kind of longevity and its efficiency and quality of the patching. So we use the hot box, so it stays hot all day long. We're looking for a trailer because right now it's on a swap loader. When I started that truck, there's only one truck that hot box could go on. So the truck was broken down, the hot box broken down. Now we have 2 trucks, and then we're working on getting a 3rd truck. And all about the kind of the wiring and the type of, we're trying to standardize equipment as well. So all the recent purchases of heavy duty trucks are all the same swap loaders, or we're able to interchange our equipment. But anyways, it will be a second hot box. It'll be a trailer, so we'll be able to tow it with a mid-size dump truck, which is kind of most of our fleet. The F550s will be able to send that out and tow it. Tow it, get it filled, come back, and build a patch. So we'd be able to send 2 crews out, a little bit more efficient. And or if we had, one issue with one piece of equipment, we'd still have a second anywhere job, so.
Then I think just the only other caveat we'd want to offer is it's, the whole interest of town, sort of and carbon footprint and, sort of being mindful of, sort of what we are using for fleet. The heavy equipment really don't have alternatives, and we continue to keep our eyes on this, but we have done, significant investments in the lighter, duty, more, kind of,
Administrative vehicles.
the administrative vehicles as well as, even some of the managerial vehicles. Aaron's driving a Ford Lightning. It's kind of nice because you're getting real world experience on all electric, and it's learning some of the lessons that are important. But really the big challenge is sort of trying to meet the needs of the community, but also being price sensitive as well, and
I would say, in FY24 funding, with between the general fund and also enterprise fund for fleet equipment, we procured 2 Ford Explorer hybrids and 2 Chevy Bolt EUV electric vehicles. So those are set to be delivered here very soon. So those are the 2 that, after doing a lot of research and kind of seeing what's out there on the market, that were best fit for us. So we have 2 more all electric vehicles coming into Public Works, which would be nice, and 2 more hybrid vehicles. So.
Any question on the fleet? No, and it's important, and I appreciate, Aaron, the mechanics, fleet supervisor, are really mindful of the work that needs to be done and getting creative with it. We do have 3 mechanics now. For years we had 2, and we were always sort of behind on the maintenance, the P&M. But now, the 3 are really sort of staying on top of our equipment. We have a lot of money invested in this, so, it's just good to have the kind of, expertise we have in-house, that sort of maintain.
And I would say this year we implemented a new fleet maintenance software. So we have essentially an asset management software for our fleet components, which we're tracking all of our vehicles. And now we're tracking kind of all of the labor hours that go into the vehicle, all the parts and the cost of those parts that go into those vehicles. So that moving forward, when we ask for replacement, we can say, okay, in the last however many years I've spent this much money on the vehicle, it's a lot cost effective to keep running it. So we're able to track all of that. And I one more note, I would, if anybody's, looks back year to year, the fleet capital plan, I would say, is a pretty fluid plan. If you look at last year's 5 years, the 5 years that I put out last year and the 5 years this year, most of the vehicles are the same, shifted a couple of years. We've, pulled one up or pushed one out a little bit, but it really depends on things that we see, whether it's a mechanical failure on one vehicle, might require us to pull it up a year or 2. Just to identify if we don't want to spend $10,000 on a vehicle that we know we're going to replace in 2 years anyway. So we try to pull that up to replace it sooner. So that's why you see some movement in there. The hot box trailer was not on our list last year, but after evaluating and having some issues with our current truck, like I mentioned, we've said, really more efficient to have a second truck as well out on the road, to be able to patch. And we're able to use our park and street crew to patch roads as well. So when the, fields are not requiring maintenance, there's not as many outdoor sports. In the wintertime, we could have 2 crews within highway and grounds out and patching. So we thought it was efficient for our entire operation to bring a second piece of equipment that can do that.
Any questions? No. We'll transition right into park and tree, because when they're not doing that work, they got this.
Perfect. So small equipment, there's also small equipment in highway, and that's really for, just that. So what might be handheld electric leaf blowers, right? Or electric weed whips, chainsaws, generators, small equipment that we might need. We just purchased actually one of the photos on the director's board. You're gonna see an electric line painter for field painting. So we bought one of those to go green. We're trying that out. It's working well. We have tree planting on here. So this is the public shade trees. This is part of our regular public shade tree and setback tree planting program that I talked about earlier. We have a tree inventory. This is the second year that I've requested the $136,000 or tree inventory. It was deferred last year. Asking for it this year. We have a current tree inventory of all our public shade trees, park trees, and cemetery trees. It's on the town website. tree keeper software. It's open to public. Anybody can look at it. That was last done with a forestry management plan essentially in 2017. So it needs to be updated. We planted a lot of trees. We've removed some trees.
What does it take to do that inventory?
Uh,
Like sending people out? to
Yeah,
the
so
field?
we bring in, last time we town contract with Davie Resource Group, which is we contract, they're certified arborist firm that we contract with regularly. I have kind of them, and I'll utilize them as a resource to help me do a kind of an independent third party inspection of a tree, or a more invasive tree inspection. But we bring in a company similar to that to come in and do a town-wide inventory, and it requires an arborist to visit every tree. They have a GPS to mark the location. They mark the species. They do a level 3, which is a kind of ground inspection, visual inspection of the tree to look at kind of the overall condition. We'll rate it either, dead, poor, fair, good. And, look for major defects that are kind of obvious, and continue on down the road, and they'll look at every single tree. So it's not something that we bring in volunteers. I know I've been asked the question before when I've talked about tree inventory, so I know earlier with the asset manager, but it's really because different folks have different opinions on trees sometimes, right? And you want a kind of a standard opinion as you go along on a condition or the species. Some people will, 2 arborists sit there and, oh, it's just this, and this, no, it's this, and
Everybody's got an opinion.
correct. So that's it. It's a physical inspection of every tree. And it's a pretty dense report. They look at like our canopy and make recommendations on, how much should you be investing every year in trees? How many trees should you be planting? What species should be planting? What's the diversity of your species?
So with the inventory, do you also get an idea of where the gaps are?
Yes. So there's open spaces it'll say,
Because
this is
that'll help you with the 250
Yeah.
trees.
If you look at it now, if you were to look at the inventory that's currently posted, it says, oh, this is a tree planting location, right?
Mhm.
I might go there and disagree, right? Because I might see, because again, the inventory is just a level 3, boots on the ground, quick inventory. But I might go and see, oh, well, there's a water shut off right here, and there's a water line, so I can't plant a tree here. It's not a good location. But in general, yes, it'll show a lot of locations.
The tree inventory, you said it's every tree in the town on public land?
The public right of
In
way.
the public
Yes.
right away, okay.
Public right of way in parks. So we did Rideout Park, Emerson, and this property in the cemetery are inventoried.
That's a lot.
Trees on conservation land are not included.
Okay.
Trees on school department land are not included. Trees on other municipal land are not included.
The question, we have Doug White Field
Oh,
under
yeah, sorry.
here, and then we have playing fields under facilities. What's just the difference?
Let me help on that one. Right now, we've, over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of transition in town, staffing transition. I'm just gonna say, it's been an issue. We've had senior people kind of move on. Fortunately, Public Works have been fairly stable, but part of the stability comes some responsibilities that, well, if no one else can step up, do you mind helping out? So we knew the Doug White Field was in need. It's on our radar. We maintain it, but basically it's on school property. We know that's an artificial turf. Aaron and his team, we know it's nearing its end of useful life. It's heavily used. And so whose budget should it fall under? Well, no matter what, it's the town, one way or another. So we want to capture these things. So in this case, we had captured this last year when we knew it was, sort of necessary. There's a recreation department. There's been transition in that department. There's a facilities department. There's been transition there. So we're just trying to make sure we capture those needs and ultimately responsibilities for advocating, explaining, and we know what we're talking about, but we also know that it may or may not be Public Works initiative, but we have captured the Doug White Field at least the last couple of years. And we will say, at one point we had a placeholder of $1 million. It's gone up to 2 million.
Yep.
Why did it go up to 2 million? Because someone who came to town, who came from another community, who just installed one of these fields, said, we just went out to bid and it was 2 million. So we updated this. We know that this is going to be controversial there's already, concerns have been raised at town meeting about artificial turf fields, environmental quality issues, safety concerns. And there's an argument and debate on all sides of this, but we know this is going to be particularly, sort of a lot of interest. One of the challenges, well, why can't we just have a natural, turf field? And, we think that'd be preferred. Well, natural turf field comes with it different needs, different maintenance, different capacity of service to the community. And so we want to make sure the community knows what's the balancing act here, and there's a legitimate, the concerns are real. There's the issue of PFAS we've talked about. Well, when PFAS was first introduced in the water supply industry, I knew we were a tip of a much bigger spear. We knew it was everywhere. It was being identified as you got this problem in drinking water to the parts per, trillion. Well, more and more people are getting PFAS is everywhere. And we now know that. So now there's risk, reward discussions that have to happen because we can't just eliminate it. In fact, they're still manufacturing it, still being used, but the question becomes, is it appropriate or not in turf fields? There's traces of it. And, the question is, it's going to be a debate. It's not going to be me taking the lead one way or another. Our interest is to present information. And Aaron, I don't know if you have any thoughts you want to offer, but
Yes.
I'm aware of these things and you should be aware of this because this is part of the process of, highlighting the, service need for the community. So go ahead, Aaron.
I would say on the existing turf field that's up there, there's a letter from the manufacturer, PFAS free. So I will start with that.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's free of PFAS.
Oh, really?
Yes, the crumb rubber had no PFAS in it. That's a question that I've been asked by on a computer from residents over my tenure here, and we've been able to provide that letter from the manufacturer for that. Second, the replacement, as far as maintenance, Alan's right. We maintain the field and the entire complex. This is just for the turf replacement, not the, anything else around there, the lighting systems or anything like that. We still have, it's in good condition. We, as issues come up, they're repaired for the lighting system, the building, the restrooms that are there, that would all stay intact. This is just a replacement of the turf. Currently, we have to make repairs multiple times throughout the year to tears or failures in the turf, and getting to the point where it's beyond our capabilities for some of these repairs. We do annual GMAX testing, which is basically essentially compression testing and density testing of the field itself. So we have it, it's still safe and playable for athletics. But it's at the point where it's at the end of its life, and we need to really look at the replacement. Hopefully, for next year. It has the highest use level of any field that we maintain. Extended seasons into the winter time, to the point where if it were a grass field, it would be beyond our capability of maintaining it and keeping it safe as a safe and competitive and a nice facility for folks to use. So, that's why we're looking at a replacement of a turf field. I'm not going to be the one that's going to make that decision. Obviously, it's the townspeople, but from just a perspective of operations and maintenance, that's kind of where we're at. So,
And we have to talk equivalents too.
and
This is, the field we have would be equivalent to what natural, and that would be something that was in a building because it can now be used year round. 3 different fields because they can't be used the same sort of capacity. Equivalence is going to matter here, and I think that's all part of the conversation. We're not alone. This discussion debate's going on. You'll read about it, Google it, and you'll see what's going on down in the Vineyard or Nantucket. There's been different, sort of interests, and there's even legislation, out there to try and address and
I
manage.
remember the first time we did that.
Yeah.
What's that?
I remember it the first time we did that.
Yes.
So that was
Exactly.
very complete answer, Alan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
But again, I'm wondering,
Why not
Why-
with the other
why
playing
is-
area? Yeah.
Doug White in one category and other sport fields in the others? It's not you
The
made a
others-
choice.
Yeah, the others were already somewhat captured between facilities and recreation.
Yeah,
And now they're kind of, we're stepping in to manage the facilities.
Mhm.
So that's now under Public Works.
right.
Recreation they've got an interim director. There's been transition, so we're just making sure they're captured. And where it actually lands and who's responsible is to be determined, I think, in some
So it
of
may
the,
not even be in your budget
it's gonna be in the town budget.
Right, I understand that.
And-
There was a decision made to
Yeah,
put
and
one here
and
and
it was
one
only
there.
because this was in our budget because we kind of flagged it
Okay.
last year, so we're being consistent.
Got it.
This year, we're now trying to adapt to the changing
Okay.
management, and we just want to make sure it's covered.
Yeah, we don't want it to get dropped and lost.
Yeah.
And even though we're not sure who's gonna own it.
Yeah, but we know that, it relates to, maintenance, and that's where highway grounds does a lot of this, regardless of the capital. And then we talk, facilities, we'll talk in a minute, just quickly, we can go
Yeah.
through.
So cemetery, this is funded out of the cemetery fund. I would make a note, last year, and again, to the comment earlier, it's above our decision on the Department of Health things are funded. Historically, the cemetery budget was funded 70-30, roughly. 70% is funded through the cemetery fund, which is gonna, revenue generated from lot sales, and interest from, preservation, prevention care, thank you. And 30% funded through the general fund. Last year, the town decided to fund it 100% through the cemetery fund. So that puts a burden on that fund. So I don't know who makes that decision, and I know it's the next level, but I would make a case to go back to how it was funded previously. That's that statement on funding, but the request for capital, two buckets, essentially historic marker restoration, so that's headstones, or gravestone restoration that we do. It's an annual ask. You see a cost increase just because, cost of maintenance has gone up. It's been historically $10,000 for as far back as I could see in budget, so we're bumping it up. Cost of everything is kind of going up. And then miscellaneous cemetery improvements based on the master plan. So this is different things, whether it's stormwater improvements, roadway improvements, engineering assessments, more than just O&M of repairs and restoration that we need to do. Could be, major landscaping projects, gate repairs, things like that.
The cemetery, committee has identified a master plan or capital plan.
Right,
right?
there
So-
is a master plan that a previous committee had put together. It's very complete. Some of the things have been completed that were identified, and so there's current, as recent as last week, the current committee's identifying kind of some of their priority items and kind of reprioritizing what's left. And so we have those real-time discussions
When
annually.
was that done? Just curious. Is it,
Master plan,
Yeah.
2017.
okay, so it's fairly recent, yeah.
The one before that, I think, was in the 80s, or maybe the early 90s.
Catching up. We're gonna now talk facilities. This is the area that Aaron and I have been sort of assumed 3 months ago. And, we're still just admittedly getting our arms around this, the beast we know as facilities. As I said, there's about 26 different facilities that range from, the visitor center to, townhouse to this campus, all these buildings. To areas like, Marshall Farm and, White Pond. These are all fall within facilities. So we're just starting to get a real understanding. There was a capital plan last year. It was interesting when we started looking at it, we saw a lot of gaps. It had a lot of detail. But as far as the overarching, I think kind of on the 20,000 foot, it was giving such detail. When you started looking at the 20,000 feet, we're missing things. There was, you'll see in the description in the narrative how we've defined the systems of these structures so they can again be managed sort of as a unit. But we broke it down and kind of rolled up a lot of these specific, doors over at Hunt Gym versus carpeting in the police department. Those are all individual items, but we know all the facilities are going to require maintenance, just like your house. In 5 years, we're not exactly sure which roof is going to leak, but we know a roof is going to leak out of 26. So, so that's how we compose this. This is going to be new information to the town. It might be, it's not when I say new, we've identified some needs that weren't previously identified.
Was there an existing budget before?
There was, so facilities was a relatively new department that was stood up under the town manager's office. And it had sort of matured, but it was overseen through the deputy or the assistant town manager at one point. There was a facility director. There was its own department. It's not unusual for a newer department. It had only been formed, 4 or 5 years ago. Once it gets, standing, it may evolve outside of the town manager's office. I think they looked at public works as we deal with a lot of assets, a lot of infrastructure. You have certain expertise. And, once the facility director moved on, town manager asked if we'd take this on. And so we've agreed at least to assess what the needs are. Likely, we're going to be going to a personnel board meeting after this meeting. We're talking about sort of hiring of a facility manager, where it'll be, I envision another division within public works. So we have highway grounds, we have facilities, water, sewer, that sort of thing. So that's where we think it's going to go. We need a manager to oversee a lot of responsibility, a lot of money, to invest. And so I think at this point, right now, kind of what we're capturing in 25. I mean, look at the order of magnitude of investments. Now, Jeff, your question, site improvements in Plainfield, the 200,000 that's in 24. These include things like, I think it's like tennis courts and, Bob, maybe you can, do you know the 24? It's not a lot of money, but you have to recall, we haven't looked back much because this is what we inherited. We're really looking forwards is, if we break these down, building envelope, repairs, renovations, or roofs, doors, windows. Kind of the bigger expenses that we see in 25, we talked about. Aaron, you were just out at the site today with Marshall Farm.
Yes, Barrett's Mill.
Barrett's Mill Farm. Barrett's Mill Farm it was a gift to the town. It's a fairly substantial structure. I think
Multiple structures. Yeah, there's a house that's occupied, multifamily house. There's 2 barns and then the farm stand. And all of the maintenance is now under facilities department with no funding plan, essentially. So, and the 4 structures in different states of maintenance, if you will. And they require some substantial improvement. So it was my first time kind of visiting the house and the building, and just not even without going inside because it's occupied, but going outside. We need to invest $200,000-$300,000. It needs, I think there's 52 windows on the house, and they all need to be replaced. They're all glass wood windows, and the roof is probably 10 years old, but it needs to be completely scraped and painted. All the trim is rotten. There's not. The egress is coming out of there. All the small little decks need to be replaced, and it needs a lot of work. And that's just the house, that's occupied. And not to mention there's a barn that's next door that needs some repair, and it's under operation. And the tough thing is it's occupied by folks that rent, obviously have a contract with the town, and they have some type of agreement that I have not dived into yet, but there's real needs there. And there's other similar properties that are similar to that in town. Harrington Farm is another one, similar kind of situation, but there's people that occupy that. There's this building and the townhouse and a lot of different buildings in town that need various states of repair. I would also say this, that, to Alan's comment, where facilities is a new department prior to FY24, every department manager managed their own facility budget, if you will. So in FY23 public works budget, we had a facilities budget. It's 133, 135 Kais Road budget was our facilities budget. So everything that we had for O&M, maintenance, investment, we kind of managed our own money. We made a request through that. They consolidated budgets in FY24. So that's what we're kind of dealing with right now and managing is the newly formed facilities budget. And then we're trying to put together with 3 months notice FY25 capital plan. So we're trying to identify some things we know in the short term we need and move it forward. I would say the significant things on FY25's budget, the biggest number on there is the 825. That's the townhouse HVAC system. I'll throw it out there just in case there's something, you know, comes up of it. But last year was requested to replace the system that didn't make the cut. In April, we found out that May range, I think, we found out the boiler failed. So currently there's no heat at the townhouse. So we're working on we put together a bid to replace the boiler. Currently the current boiler, it's two separate boilers that are tied in series right now. Can't run one boiler independently. So we have our in-house HVAC technician and plumber this week working to separate the boilers, repipe them, so at least we can get one boiler running, get some heat in the building ASAP while we put together a bid package to go out to bid to replace the boiler. Now, some folks have asked, well, why not? You know, it's a gas boiler. I will say this, it's a gas boiler. Why not go heat pump or an electric boiler, or replace the whole system? It's a very, very complicated system. It's a separate heating system, separate cooling system. To replace the whole thing, it requires, to do it the right way, we need to do an assessment, bring in an engineer, an architect, design the system, go out to bid, procure and install. There's a lot of construction. That's why there's a big ticket number on it. We can't turn that around in a couple of months. And so that's why, you know, for the current project, about 105,000, I budgeted 120 to replace the boiler so they can get us through to get us heat for the, you know, next couple of years too. So we can run that system right now. So that's an example of kind of where we're at, some of the things we're encountering.
Yeah,
So-
and that's, I think we're gonna be learning, and, you know, we get someone on board to actually manage the whole program full-time, as opposed to, you know, fortunately, you know, we got the benefit. Aaron's got a lot of expertise in facilities, you know, he's sort of, you know, studied it and understands it. Steve Dukran has also been sort of helpful. We're talking about sort of these assets. If we go right down, there's just, it's new. So we're kind of going through, you saw the memo, you know, we'll be sharing this, you know, with the town manager. I'm gonna go, Jeff, to your site improvements in playing fields. It's kind of interesting. The new arena that we're focused on is some of the tennis courts and pickleball courts and pools and things like that. You know, this is all new to us. When we get them all spiffy, we'll invite you out and test them. But you know, these are real issues. I was amazed to find out that, you know, let's talk about Ripley, Rideout. Rideout has a need. It's heavily used for pickleball. A lot of people out there, and pickleball people are, you know, they're involved, they're engaged. And so there's some needs right now, and, you know, there is a desire to have, you know, professional quality pickleball courts and tennis and hybrids. And, you know, we're talking about $425,000. They've been very vocal and interested. Our job is not to say yes or no. It's simply, if that's what the town wants, we need to budget, you know, so that's included in, you know, part of our FY25 ask. Let the town make decisions on these sorts of things. We are intending to do some repairs with some shorter money this fiscal year. And, you know, we'll see, you know, what we can do for that, you know, kind of immediate need. We've also got tennis courts at the Willard School. Jeff, the question of, well, what's Public Works doing in the school property? We're still trying to understand that. We don't know, but, you know, and there may be a good reason. We're learning, but we are capturing it because it's an asset for the community. And we will, you know, sort of, this is a rougher draft than our other budgets, but order of magnitude, we think we have it close. And when you get out here, you know, we're hoping we'll have the asset management tools to actually help us sort of, you know, predict. But all those bins, just like your house, every year with 26 facilities, you're going to be spending something. If there's a blank, then I, as a resident, would say, what's going on? What are you not planning for? Because something's going to happen. So that's the facilities, kind of a roll up. But again, we go through the same process, whatever we're doing. What are the needs? What are the approximate costs? Some detail for FY25, some flexibility that things are going to happen we didn't anticipate. And then, you know, with the town looking years out, they have to piece this together with all the other asks. So that's, I think, the capital plan. This is the more time than we've ever spent capital. Hopefully it's of interest. And if not to you, then to people who might want to watch, if they go to the FinCom and they say you got 3 minutes. You know what we might say? Please take a look at the Public Works Commission meeting, October, 11th and 10th or whatever it is today. And, you'll get some more information.
Mhm.
That's really what we're trying to do.
Very good. Good. Does anyone have more questions for
Wow,
this report?
good luck at that income.
Well, as I said, we're just the messenger.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
say we're here to help manage your system, so.
We
So,
move on to the director's report.
okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Let me see, where do we go with director's report? Right. That's the wrong one. Got it, there. Never recall who's up front.
Sorry to go back. quickly.
Yeah, please, yeah.
I don't know, is someone sitting back down with you on seeing which of these can be kind of capitalized, or I'm just more thinking it's like it's
Prioritize?
no capitalism. I
Oh.
think it's I think it's a maintenance is different than, let's say, you do a one-time investment in, let's say, a field,
Yeah,
and then you amortize that over time. So investment in a field or other things, you could easily group in buckets that then you take that and finance it with that versus ongoing maintenance. You don't want to do that. That's ongoing kind of operational things. So is anybody splitting these things really up in a way that they say, okay, out of all of these line items, these are the 5 line items then that can be kind of, that they're naturally suitable for taking a debt on and can be just from a financing perspective seen differently than just looking. Right now, we're looking more like a cash flow thing, which if you take that on for certain things, it's not the same. So is someone sitting down with you going through these line items?
We'll be sitting down with the, good news, I think we have a new chief financial officer. Gonna be starting next week, I believe. But yeah, we go through the finance department with the FinCom to understand the financing. We're not the financing group. We're sort of the operations and, capital planning, but this is gonna be dovetailed with the town's interests on, what its debt is for the entire, looking at the school, all that. So Sven, that would be really not we wouldn't be recommending that.
No,
And-
but they need to understand what's behind the different line items.
Yeah, oh, and yeah, so there's detail sheets that we're providing up to, for FY 25, so they can see what it is, not just the roll up. Or maybe I'm not answering your question.
I mean, I think the town has developed some guidelines as to how much of the budget is capital items. And I think that sort of works in with how we maintain our AAA rating. And so they will do as much borrowing in those items that make sense, as long as it's within the guidelines that they've established with our financial directors. That's my understanding.
Bob, do you have any insight or any thoughts on
Well,
that?
I mean, there was a whole capital planning task force
Yeah,
that went through, and part of that whole studying process was in trying to establish thresholds that the town could use to evaluate every year. As Jim has said, how much can we afford out of current revenue, how much can we borrow, that sort of thing. But I would point people back to take a look at the capital planning task force, because there's their report, there's a whole section in there that speaks to, borrowing versus, cash and all that.
That's somebody's homework.
Yeah, but for us, it would be good at a certain point, at least to have it back. If there's suddenly, like, for example, in fiscal year 24. Yeah. What is more or less amortized over time?
I think last year there was a guideline. We said if the amount is $500,000 or more, it'll be borrowing. And if it's less than that. it'll
Yeah,
be
but it's
paid as you
different
go.
than amortizing. So you can have kind of ongoing costs that are in that order of magnitude. It's normally not good to say, if you have a $500,000 ongoing.
It's like a water main, sort
Yeah,
of,
you're-
we
You're
ideal.
not amortizing that
Right.
really, but if you have a one-time $2 million investment in a field,
Mhm.
and you say you amortize that over 10 years. So what are these impacts to your budget? And how does this look? Because right now you're looking purely at the cash flow
Correct.
budget
Mhm.
and not at the, let's say, what does it do to a balance sheet and what are the different assets that still amortize and what are new things that are coming in. So that, and that gives you normally good senses where you throw debt on it. The things you can amortize, you throw debt on it, and things you can't amortize because they're ongoing maintenance, you should not throw debt on it. But that's just perhaps too much in the weeds, but would be good to understand is how much really in the end, when this comes back to us, in what is somehow the guidance from the finance committee and whoever else looks over it, is how much of that is, which line items are financed by debt and what is the amortization schedule behind these line items.
Mhm.
So that also gives you the thing that they say, we amortize something over 10 years. Normally amortizing schedules are typically correlated to the typical lifetime
Right.
of that
Yes.
investment.
Yeah.
So that gives you these kind of things where you know, okay, in year XYZ, things are coming up again.
Mhm.
You know?
So we have a chief financial officer. We didn't have one for a while.
Well,
So
we have an interim,
We have an
and it's
interim.
been, again, this is part of, some of the staffing
okay.
challenges,
So now we have one and they're gonna
Yeah.
look at that and they work with FinCom.
They
and
work with FinCom, the
look
town
at all that.
manager,
Okay.
and we are, a significant source of, the asks, the capital budget for the town, Public Works is, now that we've absorbed facilities, are we 90%, 80%? I don't know, but it's pretty significant.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Should we move on to director's report?
Sure. We'll
Okay.
move on to director's report. Let's see, engineering, Steve, you want to,
Aaron had to depart because of personnel.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, just reporting on a couple of projects. The first one, the Concord Carlisle High School project, even though it's not a public works project, my staff,
Helps it.
they're
Yes.
pretty proud of being involved. It's a project that was well run, and managed. We had a good contractor to start with. But they stayed on top of the project. The goal was to get it done for school reopening, and which they achieved. So the photo shows, some of the striping that was done. The center one, we worked with the BD Center. They contributed towards the project and we did the entrance. And then the third photograph is kind of highlighting the light bollard. Is a pedestrian type lighting. It's low level. It's, you see them on college campuses and so on. So it's pretty much that project. And Jero, we've taken over the management of that project. We finally settled the financial disputes with the contractor. And so they have resumed work. They just started. The first photograph showed where they responded and they fixed all erosion control. And then last week they were there for one day, doing some clearing, some weeding and so on. I thought they were coming out this week, but they informed us that they're trying to wrap up a job in Boston and then they will come back in full force and get the rest of the project done. They've given us a scheduled end date of completing the job by the end of this year, which is good news for us. It's quite a bit of work left, but we think if we can accomplish it and get the park ready for use by the end of the year. What we're showing there as Commonwealth Avenue, that sidewalks repair or replacement. Good progress since it got started. Obviously, slower than anyone would expect. Rain delays, dealing with all the access issues, the businesses, keeping, business open, impacts the parking and all of that. But the contractors made, really good progress in getting the job done. We will probably go through the middle of next month to get all the sidewalk work done and the final paving and striping. And hopefully it's packaged neatly.
That'll be done before the winter?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's our goal.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's looking really good. The concrete work is top class. It's really something that I think the contractor has done well. And that job, people have questioned, why did we need to do that, even though the concrete may have been in fairly good shape? It had a cross pitch that was really bad, bad for wheelchairs or any person with a handicap or disability, or even the elderly, because it was so pitched poorly. We have the same situation over on Main Street, not far from us. And our hope is we can land some funds and redo those sidewalks, because it was a well-used, high pedestrian area.
And the contractor is gonna have that somewhat cleaned up because there's a Discover West Concord Day coming up in like a week or two.
Yes, that was talked about. They will
Okay,
have it
all right,
presentable. for
Okay.
that day.
There's been a lot of coordination, and to Steve and his team's credit, a lot of outreach.
Yeah.
It's been a big impact,
yeah.
and, there's no question, people have been, tolerating it, but they were aware of it. It wasn't a surprise. We've had a lot of, hand holding with the various property owners and businesses, so they, no one wants a surprise. So they're aware of what's going on. Even before was the Porch Festival or the music, sort of event, we were prepared. It was rained out, but the contractor, we communicate these things. So I think we've been doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, it's great because you met with them early on
Mm.
before the project and throughout. I think that's been really helpful.
Yeah, because, what we do is high impact, and there's no hiding that. So the more we can kind of forewarn and communicate what we're doing and why, the better.
You would see some additional work in that area. We are going to be doing Bradford Street. Repave that road, and then Winthrop, right down
Yeah. and-
off of Calm Ave, not too far away. All those streets we've planned to get those done this year.
Can I ask a question about Giroux Park?
Yeah.
Is that relevant? Is the ultimate decision, it hasn't been made yet about the dam, right? Or whether.
That's right. So that's a different project.
So the park is not gonna be affected
Well,
by.
it's a good question. There is, it's a direct abutter to this resource. And so any change or modification is gonna impact the quality of that resource. And I think the discussion is, is it good to have open water? We understand the quality issues and concerns, versus a meandering stream and more, sort of natural wetland conditions. Both have different aesthetics. It might be up to the, individual to determine what they prefer. But one thing for sure is it will have water frontage either way. And, that's important. So, but yeah, there's a connect.
So even if they let the dam go, if they take the dam out.
Oh, you'd still have a meandering stream and floodplain area, and, it's a different aesthetic, but Concord is filled with, that's more indicative of Concord than, a large water body that's been, impounded.
Something related to your question, you should know the overall plan for Giroux, and we don't really have the history, but it's what I'm learning, included 2 phases. What is being done will be done by the end of the year is phase 1. Phase 2 included creating like a beach area and access to the water. How does that work with the dam removal? That's a question for me.
That's what I was. Okay, thank you.
And this is just some photographs of a guardrail project that we just got done, replacing not all, some of the bad guardrail we had on Sudbury Road and some other locations. It's a project, one of our capital requests that we would like to extend in terms of how much we are doing because we're kind of falling behind. And plus prices have gone up quite a bit and for the last few years. And so, but there's a lot more guardrail that needs to be removed.
And this is
replaced.
using the same material you've always used,
Yes.
but you're
this is-
hoping to change that material, right?
We are looking at alternatives that are
That are better
affordable
And
um,
safer
and safer
and last longer.
and last longer. The
Pay attention.
the regular galvanized beam, people don't like it because even though a few years later it loses that gloss, but you know, there are alternatives out there, but they're all expensive. If you drive some places, you'll see a metal backed wooden guardrail that's used for, you know, fairly average speeds. We actually have some installed on Powder Mill Road by the Bruce Freeman Trail project. That was phase 2B. You'll see that there. We are looking at that to see if that's a feasible alternative going forward. You know, I'm looking to do more. If you're going to pay more, you're probably going to end up doing less. But that's where we are.
All right, Jeff.
Thank you.
Jeff Morosky, Water Sewer Superintendent. And featured speaker. The,
Like it better.
Thank you, Alan.
I recognize this guy.
Well, September 20th, most of town employees were enjoying an employee appreciation picnic on this campus. I was representing Concord at a professional event. I was asked to be one of two keynote speakers. This was in Lexington at the Scottish Rite Masonic Museum and Library. John Livesey, who's the town engineer in Lexington, he was the other keynote speaker. The subject that I was speaking on was Concord's service renewal policy. It was really relevant to what this organization is all about. Their event was called the NASCO's Beantown Exchange. And that really was an event on information and knowledge sharing forum that was including presentations on the subjects of trenchless technologies, trench and confined space safety, cross bores, which is a growing problem, large diameter sewer cleaning, forced main condition assessment, which has always been a challenge. These are pressure pipes. It's been long established gravity pipe condition assessments, and then also health risk exposure from styrene from CIPP, cured in place pipe. That's not so much to the occupants of a property, it's more for the installers. They get exposed to styrene in close proximity to working with the material. So NASCO is an organization that's been around since 1976. They're best known for developing policies, practices for condition assessments of pipes, manholes, laterals. But broader than that, they're an industry source for trenchless technology, education, resources, and advocacy.
One thing I just sort of expand on, Concord was invited because of a policy that goes back that this commission sort of adopted in 2017. We were practicing it for about 5 years before. That's when there's a significant investment in the property. And we saw a lot of houses being sort of purchased, torn down, rebuilt. There was no policy in place to have the services that, you know, feed it, the essential service of water or sewer, upgraded or replaced. And so that was the policy where if people are going to put significant money into their property, this is the time to also include the essential infrastructure that feeds it. It's controversial in that most communities don't have a mechanism in place. Not maintaining these results in leaks, now you get lost water that's very hard to manage, or infiltration into the pipes for the sewer, the old clay pipes. And it's a cost that's resulting of impact on private property that's going to affect, the common utilities. And when I say controversial, it's difficult. We forever have to educate customers. If 50% of our customers are developers who are familiar, they know it. The challenge is for those, residents who are unfamiliar. They're spending a couple $100,000 on their improvement. And this does result in a requirement at that point. Usually the place is unoccupied and to upgrade. And so we got this policy in place. It's innovative. And I think the industry is interested in, how do they get their arms around it? So that was why Concord was asked to, sort of present.
So does that mean if somebody buys my house and tears it down and is building a new house, I'm just trying to understand
Yes, so
how it
it's
operationalizes.
basically, the concept is when you're spending significant money on that asset, your facility,
Yes,
don't forget about the utilities that serve it. And if it's over $200,000 of investment, additions or that sort of thing,
yeah,
they're usually once in a 50-year kind of project.
oh,
Our life cycle for the service laterals are 50 years.
so.
This is a tool where we say if the service is over 50 years, this is the time where you're making major investments, replace those.
So what am I replacing? The water line,
From the main,
yeah,
out in the street, into the building,
into the house.
yeah. Or lining it, and a lot of sewer customers use the technology they have for liners to insert, so they don't have to,
Now,
dig
is that
a
only for
trench.
sewer? Is it?
It's water and sewer.
Because
That's right.
we're septic, so
Yeah,
that would be irrelevant.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
So it wasn't their idea that I speak on this. It's just that this is a trenchless organization. And a lot of the service renewals that are taking place right now on the sewer side are trenchless. They're lining technologies. So I had that idea to present that. Interestingly, Jim probably remembers the policy was voted and approved at the rate hearing in 2018. And at that time, the line that was drawn in the sand was a 50-year age as what we thought was reasonable. In the course of preparing for that presentation, I found another resource from a nonprofit organization called the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, or RCAP. Some people may have heard of that. They had a asset life expectancy guide publication of listing various water infrastructure assets, and they list service lines as a 30 years useful life. So we're even more forgiving than this database.
All right, we're gonna now move through.
So this is two different photographs featuring the same project. This is our Butternut Circle neighborhood project. This project has gone off very successfully and it has been completed. And we're at the point to hand it off to the roads improvement program. The photograph to the right is one of the two interconnections into the 10-inch cast iron main in Old Bedford Road. There was an interconnection at Butternut into Old Bedford, and then there was a connection of Minot into Old Bedford. And then the second one was just a reverse shot. I believe that was looking down and into Butternut Circle, standing in Old Bedford on the left.
I'd like to say no change order to that contract.
If there is one, it would only be a balancing closeout
Yeah,
change order.
which is pretty good, yeah.
Which is a feather in the cap. This is featuring our, the commission members know we have an ongoing water main flushing program. We're going to the northeast section of the town in the fall. This will be starting in the next couple of weeks. And in fact, I think as early as next week, we'll be starting.
For Halloween, we like to have orange water. It can be scary, but we try to forewarn people. So. Then we'll move on to Yeah.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
ask some
please.
questions?
Yes.
Jeff, Ridge Road main break. That was a big pipe.
I caught that too. I didn't write that. I caught that. It was 78 feet. There is no pipe that's 78 feet long. I think that was a typo.
Okay.
It may have been 7 to 8 feet.
Oh, okay, fine.
Or 7 or 8 feet, and someone
One
did
of my
it.
question was, how do you have an inventory for something? Okay, thank you.
You can't possibly have a
Okay,
pipe crack that long.
okay.
They don't might make pipes that long.
NAGOG intake, is it completed yet? The liner?
The liner is complete, but it's not,
It's sealed?
it's not accepted. We're still working with both the contractor and our engineer, and also the pipe manufacturer as well, or the liner manufacturer, I should say. We're waiting to receive I think we have received a new standard operating procedure provided. That may have came in while I was
Yeah.
on vacation
Do
last
you
week.
think it's gonna be fixed and usable this
I
fall?
don't, at this point, there's a lot of theory involved with the
So the answer is
vendor.
no.
I don't have, I can't say that because the lining vendor who supplied the liner seems to think it has the right environment to function properly. Our engineer seemed to think the same thing. The problem is the installer is suggesting we've installed it according to specification. Pay us, and we now have a vendor and engineer that we need to say, well, is there an activation issue or not? So that's the theoretical stuff that Jeff is presenting. So
This has gone on a long
it's gone
time.
on a long time
It's gotta be
because
frustrating to
gone
you, but
very, very
obviously
much
we
so.
can't use this.
It can't be
use the
used
water.
at this point, right?
One more thing. Under the capacity for the wastewater, it really increased quite substantially in July and August. It was up a lot. And I thought I had asked a question before that said, when it rains a lot, does that what causes?
Yes.
And the answer I thought I heard was, no, that water doesn't get into the wastewater system.
So this is what's important. It's not by design. There are systems that have combined sewer systems with stormwater and sanitary waste. Concord is not designed to have that inflow through infiltration, leaky pipes, and
It does happen.
it seeps in. And so the higher the groundwater and the more rain events, and this is again, part of our program where we do rehabilitation of our sewer collector mains. But other sources are those laterals that go into private property, and those old laterals are as old, 100 years. So that's why our program is we maintain the collectors, and the residents, when they do these upgrades, will then line or clean up their sewer.
Okay.
But there is a cause
So
and
we
effect,
still do have infiltration.
but it's not
is what you're
direct.
saying.
Yeah,
Not through us, but through
through
before it gets to our system, is what you're saying.
through fractures in the pipe and breaks in the pipe, not by connections
Okay.
into the pipe. Correct.
Yeah, also related to the wet summer. So I assume people use less water during the summer.
Water, there's one.
Yeah.
Water lawn.
That's right.
Does this have any impact on the fee income?
So when we develop our rate structure, and we have a pro forma where we look at our projected revenue, we tend to be pretty conservative. And for instance, FY 23, which ended in July 30th, I think we looked at, we were at exactly what our projection was. So, we tend not to be too, we're conservative, meaning we anticipate selling less water than a dry season. It's based on a wet season.
Okay.
That's our anticipated revenue. And then when we set our rates, we adjust based on actual. And that all affects our bottom line.
Exactly. I'm just because then August and September is in a new fiscal year.
Yeah.
But
So-
is there any chance that you know where
Not quite yet.
August,
We're actually
September,
in a process where our software systems were sort of just went through a major upgrade. We went from admins to Munis. We do use NISC, but we're looking to, we'll be looking at that data pretty soon to see how the first 6 months of our.
Yeah, I'm just, I know,
We look at that. We do.
I
Yeah.
didn't use any drip of water in that time period.
Which-
Side of the house.
That's
So-
right. And that's our new norm. That's what we're after.
Well, it's good for my savings account,
Yeah.
but I was thinking, what does it mean?
80% of our customers, we did an analysis, and it's just important to say, I think, put this in the report last month. 80% of our customers do not go into the second or third step. 20% of our customers go into the second and third step. That 20% is responsible for 50% of the revenue. Pretty
Yeah,
significant.
That's why I know
And
that
so
there is
yeah.
a sensitivity. to
there
that,
definitely
so
is. There's
as soon as
80%
we
of
have the
people are
numbers, that
sensitive.
would be great.
Yeah.
A lot, yeah.
So I'm sorry, moving along a little bit here on highway grounds. Basically, we had the drop off, swap off last weekend here on the campus. Drove out of campus on Friday afternoon. Nice, clean, ready for the crowds. I came in on Monday. It looked the same as Friday, but
That's incredible.
they had the similar volumes. We're really well attended. But just the crews, Justine St. John, sort of our staff really sort of took control of this event. All the volunteers, the Reuse It group, all kind of orchestrated a really successful program. Great weather. It was nice. It rained on Friday, a little of an upset of an early drop off, but on Saturday it was fine. So the program went, a lot of effort, but very successful.
Right.
Highway grounds we have here, you can see, as Aaron mentioned, the in-house resources and we have great skilled laborers who can sort of do, the large patches, which mean we don't have to, third party that. This is the electric, I'm sorry, the electric line painter, which is, we're trying to walk the walk wherever the equipment is and it can perform the function. We're going to adopt it with some consideration to cost, obviously, but these are the opportunities to walk the walk. And then we're sort of, as we're preparing and sort of mobilizing for the winter maintenance, Aaron and his team have already sort of turned that gear and they're starting to make preparations, and we'll be giving you the full sort of winter maintenance program update in the next meeting or two. I think that's it for the director's report.
Okay, any commissioner comments?
Yeah. It was nice, Alan, that you put a letter in the bridge about, stormwater. It didn't say really that, it didn't give any information about the fact that it's gonna cost people money.
Not yet.
So,
We'll get that message out.
okay, because, I don't think we can wait just until town meeting and
Nope.
say, oh, by the way, it's gonna cost everybody money to do this. So if we're gonna educate people, I think that part of it.
There may be an opportunity. That's a good question. It really came as a result of someone who was curious about the program. I basically took the information engineering provided and repackaged it because she wanted to know about the program. And then there was no follow-up, but basically talking with the town manager, I think we might be looking at a venue, maybe a water resource venue in December to talk about water supply, drinking water, stormwater, and wastewater. They're all important.
Yep.
And I think we do, and we'll start
Okay.
talking about that impact, but point well taken.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to say something? Carrie?
Hi, thank you all for serving on the commission. And thank you, Alan, and your team. Yeah, Alan, we'd love to have you on the select board agenda to come in and talk about the stormwater utility and also the public works needs, which are much greater than the budget will allow. And I do have one strong opinion about that, and I've been working with the town manager, and I hope that you guys will join in. we have some sources of revenue besides the general fund. I think we need to look at increasing user fees. You talked about the people who want pickleball or tennis or even, team sports with the schools, or all of these user fees haven't been looked at in a long, long time. And if people want these services, great, but then they can help pay for them a little more than, at least, not that the town should make a profit, but that we should break even on these things. And the same with the enterprise funds. With the facilities, the water can contribute to facilities, sewer can contribute, all the enterprise funds should be contributing, not just the general fund. And I think if you do all of those little nickel and dime things, you will find, having been a budget officer in Sudbury for 13 years, you will find that they will add up to $500,000 or $1 million to help with field improvements and facility improvements, which isn't enough, but it's a help. So I'm working hard on that, and I hope to get your support as well.
Thank you, Terry. Terrific. Good advice.
I think to second this is, for example, if I add up all the parking lots planning board gave away for free, if the planning board had followed the parking assessment from 2019 to charge between $5,000 and $10,000 per parking lot, that they give away for free, there would have been a lot of money in the last 2 years. So, one thing we have to make clear is that stuff it's not for free in this town.
All right. Any other comments, questions? I don't see anyone on there.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a move to adjourn?
I will adjourn.
Second.
All
Second.
right.
Everybody.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
all right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
I'm
guys.
going to